Hello and welcome to today's webinar, State of AI in Proposal Development. Thank you so much for investing this time with us and our industry leaders. If you are an APMP member, this webinar will apply toward your continuing education units for certification. As with all Shipley webinars, this presentation will be uploaded to our website by tomorrow, so please share with your colleagues and anyone who might benefit from today's discussion. If you have questions during the presentation, please type them into the Questions tab in your control panel. We will answer as many as we can in a Q&A session at the end of the webinar. We have two experts joining us today. Vishwas Lele is the Chief Technology Officer at pWin.ai, where he leads the development of their pioneering AI-driven proposal development tool. Amy McGeady is the Senior Vice President of Strategic Services at Shipley Associates. She provides leadership for Shipley's strategy and process offerings that help clients optimize business development practices for sustainable winning results and successful teams. Amy has been a proposal manager, a proposal center director in a Fortune 100 company, a small business owner, and a nonprofit CEO and CSO. She currently serves on the APMP Board of Directors. She has demonstrated success growing businesses and nonprofits in multiple market sectors. She has expertise in a wide range of business development functions, including strategic positioning, proposal management, process optimization, and team building. Thank you, Amy and Vishwas, for being on our panel today. And with that, I'll hand control of the webinar to Amy.
Thank you, Mallory. We're really excited to come and kick off 2025 with everyone. As we get started, we want to share a little bit about our partnership. Shipley and pWin.ai came together to offer our customers the trusted best practices that Shipley has developed, used with clients, and trained on for 50 years, and the best AI technology in our industry, pWin.ai. Together we help companies and teams win more business and gain all the benefits that AI has to offer. So as we talk about the state of AI in 2025, we want to cover 5 topics with you. First, the current state of AI, 2025 AI implications specifically for proposal development, the importance of bridging the skill gap that we see and that exists today, the skills needed to optimize human and AI collaboration, and how to lead change in 2025. So as we think about the current state of AI, we want to look through the lens of the 6 main elements of Shipley's new AI leadership framework. So that is first, technology, the tools, the platforms, the solutions available generally and in our space, people, their skills, their capabilities, data, so content readiness and having clean data that supports the best AI uses, culture, team cohesion, and then strategy, unified direction for a team, and finally process, the steps and accountability that support AI rollouts and then support our work in developing proposals. So let's start by looking at the current state of technology. While AI models are improving, some experts are questioning how much more progress we're going to see from simply scaling up with more data and computing power. So Vishwas, I'll hand it over to you to talk to us about the projected pace of advancement this year.
Yep, thank you, Amy. The title of this slide, the AI performance is plateauing, may be interesting to some. Anybody who's following the news in 2024, we know that there are a number of announcements, bigger models, more data. So why are we saying that there is plateauing of performance? But what we are finding, in fact, is that, yes, there are performance gains, but they're not commensurate with the higher infrastructure and training data that is going in. And I'll cite a couple of examples. You've probably heard of OpenAI's Orion, internal name for GPT-5. There was a wide expectation that GPT-5 would come out in 2024. It did not. And by the way, the same is the case with Google Gemini or Anthropic's 3.5 Opus release expected in 2024 did not come out. And for the same reason that we are seeing that this scaling of more compute infrastructure, more data leading to better models, we may be seeing a plateauing of performance there, Amy. So that's one. Of course, that's related to data limitations. So finding new high quality data is becoming difficult. Gone are the days where you could just scrape the websites or the internet or open source data. But now new data, high quality data is harder to find. And then the third point, which is rising cost, is somewhat related to the first point. It is not that we are not seeing performance improvements in these models, but like I said, the cost benefit analysis, the change in performance relative to the cost that is going into training these models is still too high. So, Amy, at the same time, even though the performance is plateauing, we are seeing a shifting in focus. So, if these models are not going to grow as rapidly as we expected, maybe there are alternative ways of addressing it. And one common term that we are hearing today is agent. Of course, we all know agency from real world. Think of agency as the capability to influence an environment to achieve a certain outcome. That's what agency means. Very similar meaning here in case of AI, where you're letting AI, one or more models, taking an action, sending an email, buying something for you, and taking that action for you. So multiple AI models working together towards an outcome. So we are seeing a shifting focus towards things like agents, Amy.
Well, so despite the challenges and even the buzz about AI plateauing, I know companies really are remaining optimistic about the future of AI, even though some timelines for achieving more powerful AI might be slightly uncertain as the technology continues to evolve. Um, so, Vishwas, can you talk to us a little bit more about why we're so optimistic?
Yes, of course, the previous slide was, well, maybe your performance is plateauing, but turns out that these researchers and people working on these AI models are a creative bunch. If one aspect of the models cannot be scaled just by throwing more hardware at it or throwing more data, they have figured out other ways to get us more performance. And let me just talk about that. And these are the things why we are optimistic going into 2025. So let's just take the first example here, reasoning model. Up until now, we were very much about predictive model, right? The model has been trained on reams and reams of data, and now you ask it a question and it figures out based on the pattern how to reply to the next question or a next word or a next sentence. But now we are moving towards a model where these models can reason. And let's just take an example. I asked the model to write a response to a certain section. Let's use an example from the context here. Rather than just coming out and writing that response, let's just take a moment to think about how would I write that response. Maybe there are three different approaches. Maybe I'll go down the first approach. Maybe that approach won't work well for me. Maybe I should go look for the second approach. So we are seeing reasoning models coming in, and certainly we saw that with OpenAI's O1 model in September, and then very quickly right after that was the O3 announcement coming in the late part of December of 2024. Similarly, we are seeing test time infrastructure, and I know it's a mouthful, it's too technical. Let me break it down. So imagine you're teaching a child a math problem. So you, of course, you teach them concepts, you give them problems, you see if they understood it. If not, you try to teach them in alternative ways. Think of this how we train AI models. Now comes the child is ready, has understood the concepts, it's time to test. And of course, you can just throw the problems at them, but also you can achieve better results if you think about, is the child in a quiet place? Do they have the right sharpened pencils? Do they have the calculator? Think of these things as test time infrastructure. And what we are finding is that by giving these models more flexibility at the time they're answering the questions, we can also get better productivity from these models. And the final point, which I'm very optimistic about, is the thinking time. So, Amy, we've talked about this previously. If you went to ChatGPT and said, ChatGPT, this is a difficult question, please think about it for 5 minutes, ChatGPT will not know what to do with 4 minutes and 49 seconds, 0.5 seconds, and it will just spit out an answer, right? It just does not know what to do with that additional thinking time. And what is most exciting now is now you can ask a question and say, I'm going to give you these options, this variability in terms of how much time you should take to think about these. And of course, this is near and dear to our heart in pWin, of course. We've always, Amy, called ourselves a thoughtful pilot, a system 2 co-pilot, which is always taken. In fact, we have gotten these questions from our customers and prospects. Why does it take you minutes or even hours to generate a response? Well, we're doing a lot of self-reflection before generating the content for you.
So it really seems like the researchers and leaders in AI are really leaning into the things you've talked about so many times in Daniel Kahneman's thinking fast and slow, and some of those techniques to do some deeper thinking and more thoughtful analysis. So that's exciting for the year ahead. So now that we've talked about some of the hopeful trends in AI overall, Vishwas, let's relate them to proposal development.
Yes, we should do that because I realized that the previous slide was, even though interesting, was maybe a bit abstract. So let's just bring it back to earth and talk in terms of proposal development here. So let me start by saying that there's a lot of talk about autonomous AI, self-driving cars, and let me remind people that you still have to be paying attention and be ready to take over when the car gets into a sticky situation. So there's a lot of talk about autonomous AI, but proposal writing is much harder than driving. Of course, we all know that you have to balance so many things, right? You have to worry about the intuition, about how to respond. You have to worry about the motivation of the buyer. You have to think about the differentiators. Writing a proposal is so much harder. So we think the current state of AI, it is the assistive nature of the AI that is going to be most productive. And this is no different. Again, I'm going to cite the pWin example. We've always thought of ourselves as a co-pilot, as an assistant to all of the capabilities that proposal writers and their experience bring to the table. So that's one. Critical interaction versus shallow interaction. Amy, I'm going to talk a little bit more later on this topic, but we are finding that the more value that you can get from AI is dependent on your style of interaction with the AI, right? You could have some shallow question for ChatGPT and say, hey, generate me an answer to this question, or go to my website and generate me a capability statement. Of course, it'll do that, but that would be a shallow interaction. A critical interaction is where you're reflecting on what AI is generating, questioning it, and using it to generate better content. And again, in the case of pWin, we have a very important notion that Amy, you and I have talked about in this webinar series previously, the notion of a flight plan, where we are forcing proposal writers to have a critical interaction with the AI. This is where they are setting the vision and turning the knobs and dials so that the AI can work based on their ideas. And if they don't like the output, they can certainly go back, do some self-reflection, go change the flight plan, and a new content can be generated. The third one, I've already talked about reasoning versus prediction, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this. The fourth point is we hear about this a bit, about generic versus custom models. We have heard about things like, can you just train on my data? Can you come and take my proposal library and just train on it? Or can you take this proposal methodology and can you just train on it, right? There's always this thought. We have focused on this idea on using the latest models. And at pWin, we have always tried to stay up with the latest and greatest models. We think that generic models combined with a lot of reasoning can get you better results. And if anybody's interested during Q&A, we can go into some studies where they've taken custom models, trained it on medical data, fine-tuned it, and then ultimately compared the performance of a large language model like GPT-4, but a lot of reasoning behind it. You've seen that the generic models perform better. The final point to make here related to proposal development is data quality versus data quantity. It is not about you just taking all of your documents in the proposal library and just giving it to AI. The data quality is very important. And in the previous bullet item, I talked about how we are using the best and generic models, which means these models have not been trained on your data, which means at content generation time, we retrieve the data from your proposal library. So it's important for that proposal library to be high quality and the content to be organized well. And we will talk more about this, Amy, later on as well.
Okay. So moving on to people as a current trend in 2025, there's a lot of great information on how much productivity we'll gain just by using AI and using it effectively. But according to a recent Gartner study, nearly half of the people who are actually using AI say they don't really know how to achieve these gains. So that highlights some critical gaps, not in the tools themselves, but in how prepared people are to use them. So I want to highlight three key skill gaps that can get in the way of using AI to its fullest. The first is technical proficiency. So understanding how to use AI tools effectively. The second is strategic application. So knowing when and where AI can actually drive productivity. And the third is change readiness. So adapting to AI driven shifts in workflows and decision making, even right now, coping with little waves of uncertainty as technology evolves. So, AI, we need to think of it not just as a tool in 2025, but really as a change initiative that requires strategic planning, upskilling, and ongoing support to integrate it into our daily work and drive real impact. So, success with AI in 2025 and beyond depends on developing people, not just deploying technology. So we talked about some of the skill gaps on the previous slide. Vishwas, you've been looking at how academics are helping people understand AI's strengths and its limitations and how to collaborate better with a partner. Would you share some of the things that you've been learning with us?
Sure, Amy. I've always found that trying to look at other industries, in this case academia, to see how people are solving similar problems. Maybe they have had a head start in some of these things. How are they solving these problems? Have been an important source of learning and some feedback that we can derive from those. So I've been looking at a number of studies. I picked one, Amy, that I thought would be interesting. And this study relates to some writing, and I thought that was relevant to our webinar topic here. This study comes from a university in Australia, and this study is based on a graduate level data science class that involved writing a piece about ethics in natural language processing. Right. So they took these students, as you can see, these are graduate level class. They had to write this critical summary, and there were different aspects to what they had to write. They were evaluating on the writing skills, their research. They were also being evaluated on personal reflection. That was the premise of the study. And what they found here was that a majority of the students across these dimensions had a shallow interaction. And that number is not small. About 84% of the students had a shallow interaction with ChatGPT, where they would go to ChatGPT and say, summarize this for me, or give me 5 bullets that I can add into this section, and not really engaging with the AI, right? The only one area where this interaction became more critical was when they were asked to reflect on limitations of AI. For the rest of the segments of the study, 84% or more, there was shallow interaction. So these academics got together and said, okay, we got some better engagement in one area, shallow engagement in other areas. How can we learn from this study and come up with a framework that can be a model for students who are trying to engage with AI? And they came up with a framework. And the bullets here on the slide, what I did was I took their framework and I thought that this framework is helpful and builds on the slide that you presented, Amy, in the previous part, which is about individuals and focusing on people. So this framework really talks about how can we take advantage of the learnings from this academic research paper. And if you look at their framework, it breaks down into 4 parts. How are you planning and generating ideas? So if you have to respond to a proposal, you may have lots of tools available to you. You may have M365 Copilot available to you where you can go in and start experimenting and generating some ideas. When AI is generating some contents, how are you evaluating the information carefully? And in case of pWin, we have talked about, we generate things like the hallucination report. How are you using that information. That's just a report, but ultimately somebody has to critically analyze that report, go back to the source and make sure that information is accurate. Third one is reflecting on AI usage. What did AI do? What were the strengths? Looking at the generated text, going back and changing the flight plan. This is all leading to a more critical interaction. And then finally, engaging with in interactive conversations to not just generate ideas, but developing the input that goes into things like the flight plan. So if you look at these aspects of how they are suggesting students learn interacting with the AI, I think these apply to proposal writing as well.
Well, Vishwas, when you originally shared the study with me and helped encapsulate the main points, it also just made me think about how we guide a new human team member. So, someone who's really smart but less experienced than we are, we would help them with, we wouldn't just give them some shallow instructions or minimal information or accept kind of surface level responses. We'd coach them on how to reflect and how to engage in a more meaningful way, how to evaluate information. And there would be some level of back and forth to help deepen their understanding and their contribution. So, I think it's really interesting, and I think these are really useful points as we go into 2025. Okay, so we've talked about the latest advancements in AI technology. We've talked about people. Let's talk a little bit more about data.
Yeah, Amy, this slide is very important because up until now we've been talking about a lot of advancements in AI. But let's just come back to Earth. Let's just follow the laws of gravity. And in this case, data is paramount in terms of how you're going to get the quality out of uh, the AI models. So just like a strong foundation leads to civil stability and functioning of a building, data is very important for any AI model. And imagine for a moment that AI was a student. And if AI was a student and had to go look up a book, it would help to have that book be well organized, the pages in sequence, table of contents, uh, well annotated, so that the AI could go find the information and can learn from it. And this example is important because as we think about our proposal libraries, we have to think about how we organize information. Of course, there's expertise involved, and Amy, I'm sure you can talk later about how you organize this information, what information should go in where, what should be preserved. There are human aspects to that that have to be considered. And I mean, I'm sure you'll talk about that in a moment, but just from an automation perspective, what I would say is it's important for you to clean your data. So you'll have these RFP response documents, you have CPARs, you have other collateral. How do you break it down in a manner that is easily accessible to AI? Are you preserving the nesting hierarchy? Similarly, are you preserving the metadata that was associated with these documents to begin with? Because once you have this metadata, then you'll be able to filter on it so that the AI can get the precise information that it needs in order to generate your content. So uh, you're probably thinking to yourself that, is the breaking down of these documents, this organization of these documents, preserving this metadata, tagging these documents, does it require a lot of human work? And I'm here to tell you that we have focused a lot on automating this. So once you've laid out the best practices about how the data should be organized and what kind of content should go in, we use AI models at pWin to remove the laborious human manual work that may be needed to organize that content. Amy?
Yeah, I think it's a great point. I love your textbook example because it just makes it so clear of, what information you would put in the textbook if you have 10 chapters on a specific topic and only one, on another. It inadvertently gives the impression that those 10 chapters are more important than one. So kind of having a balance to the information that you have in your data repository, and creating a system for updating that regularly. So this is something that Shipley has helped companies with for quite a while, is really how do you structure your proposal content, and then how do you develop systems for reviewing it and refreshing it, all to ensure that the AI tools can generate precise, high quality responses and really make sure that your data is a strategic advantage for your AI model and then for eventually the proposals that get developed out of it. We've talked about the current state of AI technology and where people are in terms of their AI readiness and AI proficiency. We've talked about data. Now let's shift gears and talk about culture and about strategy. As we started the year on January 2nd, Harvard Business Review released a new study that shared that 91% of the challenges to becoming AI driven are cultural, not technological. So while technology is widely available, organizations are really struggling to manage change, help people collaborate better with each other and with the technology, and then shift their mindset in the ways that this new technology requires us to. So this matters because according to the same study, 76% of companies are still experimenting with AI, but the number planning to scale has jumped to 24%. So early last year, when we talked about the state of AI in 2024, only 5% of companies surveyed thought that they were really going to be scaling AI into their operations. Well, starting 2025, 24% of companies plan to scale AI within their organizations. So while we're in the early stages of AI adoption overall, 2025 is poised to be a year of rapid acceleration. And to succeed, organizations need to prioritize culture and ensure that teams are prepared, they're aligned, and they're equipped to embrace AI-driven change, not just the technology itself. So when we think about process, there is going to be a lot of things that we need to do to be better at using AI in the years ahead. Integrating AI into business development, it requires thoughtful planning to really maximize the benefits. Organizations, of course, must select the right tools, provide training, and create workflows that blend human expertise with AI capabilities, kind of like we were just talking about, Vishwas, on data. Both the human and the technology component of really optimizing your data. And as we think about that human and AI collaboration, of course, AI can handle these data-heavy tasks, things like proposal content generation, RFP analysis, bid compliance checks, and all of those things in the right environment are freeing people up to focus on really strategic and high-value work. But AI isn't magic. It only delivers value with human oversight. So this human in the loop that we've talked about throughout this series is really essential to reviewing the outputs, providing context, and course correcting. And things like strategic decisions, customer insights, relationship management, those are always going to need human expertise. So rather than thinking that we're just going to layer AI onto old processes, in 2025, one of the things in the current state of AI is really thinking through how we're going to reimagine our workflows to play to AI's strengths while keeping human judgment where it really counts. So, we've talked about the flight plan throughout this conversation, and tools like pWin.ai's flight plan really show how AI can enhance efficiency without replacing human leadership, like really freeing up time to bring in those uniquely human and strategic and creative insights. So in 2025, the key to successfully integrating AI into operations is really balancing this human connection with this great technology to drive smarter, faster, and more meaningful business outcomes. We also see changes in the future of procurement. So we really expect to see more AI on the procurement side of acquisition, particularly in terms of automating data analysis, contract writing, decision support. For example, just this month, the Army announced a new pilot project to explore potential applications of generative AI for the services acquisition activities. So this Army pilot called #CalibrateAI It's going to run through the second quarter of this fiscal year, and it's really focused on helping the Army streamline complex acquisition tasks and doing things like finding and synthesizing information about Army policy, market research, acquisition documents. It will also aggregate and summarize responses to requests for information. So it's really going to be critical for those of us on the proposal side to make sure that any of our responses are clear, concise, and data focused, and really focused on compliance and trying to stand out in automated scoring as our customers use AI technology to write RFPs and to evaluate our proposals. One of the trends we predict is that oral presentations are going to really take center stage, and this requires business development teams to really master the art of storytelling and be able to do live problem solving during demonstrations. And then finally, external validation, looking at past performance and innovative approaches will play a pivotal role in differentiating our team in this more and more competitive environment. And then finally, the future of the AI proficient individual, as AI reshapes our business development workflows, that professionals really need to develop new skill sets to remain competitive. Things like AI literacy are really going to be essential business skills alongside strategic thinking and data-driven decision making. Content curation is going to gain importance, so ensuring that AI tools are fed with high quality, relevant data. As I just mentioned, oral presentation skills are going to be more critical than ever. So with AI automating many of the human aspects of writing proposals, the professionals themselves have to shine in person, demonstrating their value and their expertise to clients. Business development leaders are really going to play a pivotal role in fostering a culture that embraces AI while supporting team members in adapting to new roles and responsibilities. As leaders, I think it's so critical that we understand how difficult change is, not just for ourselves, but for the people that work with us. And it's really important to create an environment that's really conducive to integrating AI and supporting our team members in new roles.
Amy, that's very well said. And I would just emphasize again that our goal at pWin is really to help you get to that draft faster so that we leave enough room for you to do exactly the kinds of things that Amy, you talked about. More strategic thinking about your competitors, creating more differentiators. Those are the things that you can work on if you can automate the early parts of this proposal writing. And that's been our focus, Amy.
Okay, great. And as we mentioned, as we see more and more companies moving from experimenting with AI to really scaling and fully implementing AI, there's really a fairly straightforward path that we recommend that you could follow to really lead your organization successfully to be able to optimize AI and bring it into your organization successfully. So, first, really thinking about leadership, having your leadership be clearly aligned on its strategic direction and the role AI will play in that, having clean data, having a team of AI champions within your organization who are charged with leading rollouts and becoming super users, that as others really start using the technology, that you have people there that can support and help them so that you're not in that statistic that we shared earlier, that people are using AI but not really sure how to even get the benefits out of it. Training all of your users well, and then updating your workflows to new ways of thinking and new ways of working. So, all of this can set you up for a fantastic 2025. The starting point can be Shipley's new Executive AI Workshop or our BDAI training. For people that would like to take our training, there's a QR code. Our next training will be on February 5th. And if you'd like to talk to an expert at pWin.ai and get exposure to their sandbox environment, there's a QR code here for you to do that too. I know Vishwas and I both are eager to meet with you and answer your questions as we come to a close today. So thank you.
Hello there, everyone. Great work, as always, Amy and Vishwas. My name is Patrick Archer. I'm a senior solutions engineer with pWin.ai. I have the pleasure of leading the Q&A on today's webinar. I've been making note of the participation questions here in the webinar chat, so our speakers today will field as much as we can before the top of the hour. Before we jump into the Q&A, we have another face joining us here. I'd like to introduce Drew Hartley, our Senior VP of Solutions Engineering at pWin.ai. Drew will contribute to our Q&A forum in a moment, but before we commence, I wanted to provide Drew with a moment just to share his thoughts on the upcoming feature release for pWin.ai that should be arriving right around the first week of February. So Drew, over the last couple of months, pWin.ai has been working diligently on weaving in different enhancements to the solution that have been based on the consensus demand of the field, really accounting for lots of the different features that most BD and proposal stakeholders have been chomping at the bit for. So can you just take a moment here to kick us off and just describing what pWin.ai's user community can expect in this upcoming release?
Yeah, thanks, Patrick. We've taken a lot of input from our many customers. I've gotten great feedback from them, and then brought that in with our sort of product vision and where we think AI can add the most value inside the BD and proposal domain, and with Shipley's expertise and input as well. So really three really rich sources of input, and we have turned all of that into input for our next release, which is coming here, like you mentioned, in just over a week. And is really the next evolution of our product. Some really big new features are going in from the user experience, and really creating a modern design that the users, whatever your role is, will really feel like is powerful and slick and easy. Removing some different usability bottlenecks and challenges that were in the current product. So really excited to get that out. We have new workflow features and status indicators, just trying to bring more visibility to the users on what's going on in the tool and the steps in which they're going to take in the tool. We've got a new writing algorithm, which really takes even a deeper deconstruction, if you will, of the writing process using Shipley's best practices on how to write really good content. So that's coming, which we're really excited about, and sort of the next level of AI proposal writing. And then support for improved compliance, which is obviously critical in being able to submit a quality proposal. If you can't get past compliance, then you're going to be in trouble. And so those are just a few of the many features coming. Our existing customers have found out about that, and we're excited to roll that out. So if those of you haven't connected with us to get a demo of pWin, or haven't seen it in a little while, it's a great opportunity to connect and let us show you the next evolution of the product. So really excited about that. And then I'll also use this time, if you'll allow, for me to plug our new monthly, well, not new, but sort of more broadly rolled out monthly pWin Summit series, where we're inviting different companies and members of those companies into monthly deep dive sessions, not all day, but most of a day, where we really go deep into the thought leadership around AI, proposal tools, bring in industry leaders as well to share. It's been a great collaboration between Shipley, ourselves, and some of our customers. So if you're interested in that, they're in the DC, Virginia area. Would love to connect with you on that if you're interested. So two exciting things that we're rolling out more broadly. So love to connect with you there. I'll pass it back to you, Patrick, so we can jump into the questions.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, a lot of excitement right around the corner. So to kick us off here, a lot of teams are having growing concerns over where AI is going to really provide efficiency. And there are concerns over essentially plateauing performance with AI. So how can organizations identify when they've reached the limits of their current AI tooling, such as ChatGPT, Copilot, and Claude? So perhaps the panel can speak to adoption best practices, assessing organizational readiness for specialized AI solutions, and really highlighting the difference between general purpose generative AI tools and tools like pWin.ai. So, Vishwas, would you like to kick us off? I know in the webinar you spoke to some of these elements already.
Yeah, thank you, Patrick. As we talked about earlier, right, that these models, they've been on a trajectory of bigger and better models, but we are seeing at some point that they're plateauing. And your question from the audience was, when do you see a sense for these models plateauing, and how can tools like pWin help you, right? So the answer to that question really is that it is more than the model itself, right? It is about how the specialized tool is able to think like a proposal writer. That's number one. And that requires infusing best practices that come in working with a partner like Shipley. I'm sure Amy will talk more about it, right? So you have a generic model, but that does not understand how the best practices of proposal writing flow in. That's one part. Secondly, making sense of the data. We talked about data classification, organizing this data, and making the best use of data. So combining the best practices and making the best use of the data together is going to get you the best performance. It's not just increasing the size and the scale of the model. Patrick?
Yeah, thank you, Vishwas. Great perspective there. There's obviously a place for more of that general purpose AI tooling, but as your use cases expand and become more specialty focused, there's solutions like pWin.ai to support that evolution. So, Amy, you had mentioned in your portion a lot of emphasis on measuring ROI, on integrating AI into proposal processes, helping essentially gauge productivity improvements and among other types of areas. Can you further emphasize where teams can begin to look at measurements of ROI once they begin using actual tools like pWin.ai within their larger proposal process?
Sure. Thanks, Patrick. I think in terms of ROI, companies will make bigger gains the longer that they've been using AI and the more everyone is skilled in using tools effectively. So I think over time, you will be measuring things like, is your win rate increasing? Is your revenue generation increasing because you can win more proposals, you can submit more proposals? But I think initially, as companies adopt AI and want to assess the ROI, what we see are companies starting to just try to measure, how they do things today. So for example, how long does it take you to shred the RFP and create a compliance matrix today? Versus once you start using an AI tool, how long does that take you and how much time have you saved and what's the ROI on that? Or how long does it currently take you to draft proposal sections? And once you implement an AI tool, how long does that take? So I think initially, some of the initial ROI are things like, improvements in efficiency that you gain in the short term over how you traditionally have done your work. But I think in the long run, once your team is using AI well, you can start measuring in addition to that. Are you submitting more winning proposals? What is that doing for your revenue generation? Are you saving money in terms of your operating expenses, for example, because you can have greater productivity? Or even do your reviews potentially take less time from executives because now you're using something that has a reporting feature that you can do a first scan review without needing to bring together a big team of executives. So I think those are some of the things that you can measure to see the ROI on your AI investment.
I think, Patrick, if I could jump in after Amy, I think the other thing too is we're at a unique moment where we've certainly had early movers, I think, up to this point who have been jumping into using AI in business more generally and in the BD and proposal space, and they've been able to go through that learning Amy's talking about and start to reap real tangible value. I think the other thing, though, is we're at a moment now where I think it's the right time, in my opinion, a little biased, but for everybody to jump in, because it's soon where it was an opportunity for companies, you're going to be at a competitive disadvantage without it. There's some really good questions. We'll try to get to many of them, and I can't remember who said it, but I saw one. that just made me think about the idea, like, you win proposals by using a specific recipe. And I think in this space, you still have to make sure, if you're using AI, and pWin certainly takes this approach, of how it's helping you with the nuts and bolts, the blocking and tackling of writing compelling, compliant proposals. And so, those things are still true without AI, and with AI is going to help you do it better. And that's pWin's whole approach, is to help you and augment you and your teams to do it better, faster. And now we think now's the right time versus waiting for later, as other teams, other companies are able to take advantage, and you're not.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you both for that perspective. This next question here is one we get often with a lot of these types of webinars, but as AI becomes more prevalent in proposal development, what is the team seeing in terms of regulatory or compliance challenges? And how can organizations ready themselves, take preemptive actions, if you will, to address them? So if the panel could speak to sort of the industry outlook in AI adoption, how potentially the government has already, as we know, and will continue to permit usage of generative AI solutions. Vishwas, I'll allow you to kick us off, and then certainly the rest of the panel would love your perspective as well.
Yeah, definitely. We Patrick, Amy and I focused on that, along with Marty, focused on that very topic the last time around. We are beginning to see some regulation, and we talked about the NASA soup being one, where the agency has gone ahead and said, would you provide any mention of any AI tools that you may have used, or any consultants that you may have used in preparing a proposal, right? So that was one example that we talked about. And there may be, as Amy mentioned earlier, there may be other ways that the government may be looking to evaluate. She talked about orals and other aspects of it. But as far as the people is concerned, Patrick, we talked about it. We are generating content based on your knowledge repository and your knowledge repository alone. So it's your past performance, your creative solutioning, your understanding of the requirements that the issuing agency has, is what is getting ultimately constructed as part of the draft that AI is generating, right? So we have this important statement as part of pWin that we make, where you can go to pWin.ai hyphen responsible AI, and we talk about our authorship, or rather no authorship principle. We are not claiming authorship, because you're the one authoring the content of the proposal. Drew, would you like, or Amy, would you like to add anything to that, please?
No, I was also thinking about the NASA soup RFP too, and our conversations about that. I do think that that point is really important, Vishwas, about, like, are you using AI just like ChatGPT and scraping the web to create content, or are you actually using an AI solution that's based on your data? I think it's TBD what the government will do in terms of trying to regulate and control that. But I think, that's one of the things that we hear repeatedly, is just a desire to make sure that we're not submitting proposals that aren't really based on what we would truly deliver to our government customers. So, something that comes off the internet versus our own content, runs the risk of that we're proposing something that we're not capable of delivering. And I do hear that that's something that procurement officers want to make sure that they're controlling for in the future.
Yeah, I think those are all good points. I think AI is here to stay. This is not something where I think the government will say you cannot use AI, because that is a very blurry delineation. I think, Vishwas, in that last webinar, you even talked about Grammarly is a popular tool that people use in writing, and technically underneath Grammarly is AI, right? So Word has AI, right? Like, AI is just going to be this thing that is threaded through everything, right? I think their goal is to help them pick the best, vendor for that, and that comes back to those key points that differentiate you, which is how are you unique, and what is your past performance and your proof points, right? Those things are still true without AI and with AI, and there's certainly the risk that they're going to get flooded with volume. I think that's the main concern for the proposal, for the procurement people I have met with, is if now people can click one button and create a proposal, even if it's garbage, that is volume that they have to deal with, and they'll use AI to help them with that as well, right? So I think it's here to stay. We'll see how it evolves, but our whole approach, like Vishwas mentioned, is what we call our no authorship principle, where we are not authoring it. We are helping you author it with your perspective, your content, your approach.
Excellent. So this next question comes from Jonathan. So Jonathan asks, what are we seeing for the number of people or the number of functions within an organization that are using a proposal AI? In your experience, team, are you only seeing proposal managers accessing a specialized AI solution, or is it applicable to additional stakeholders in the planning and the writing process? Drew, I'll let you start us out there with your perspective.
Yeah, happy to share from what we've seen, and love Amy to give the Shipley perspective as well. I mean, we have built pWin to support any number of roles inside of it, right? It is a multi-team effort, multi-role effort to create a proposal, a good proposal. And so to build a good tool in this space, it needs to be able to support multiple roles. And so, and provide the ability for those roles to give input and along the BD and proposal lifecycle. And so we certainly see different roles being used inside of it, and you can bring that in. We have a chat feature inside of our tool. You can ask it whatever you want, whatever your perspective is, and we can talk about best practices of doing that at a later time. But whatever your role in the process is, you can get value from it, and we've built that into our tool. So definitely multiple roles. Different companies do approach it differently. Some people might put a proposal manager, quote unquote, in front and have them manage that interactions, and some try to open it wide. And we've talked in previous webinars of one of our customers trying to get pWin distributed to the edges of their organization so that there's not bottlenecked inside of a COE, right? So often, COEs, if you even have a COE, can only get to so much. And so business units or other business groups are still responsible for responding to proposals. And so we've seen companies try to push the technology to the edges so that they can ultimately use it more broadly. So that's what we've seen at pWin. Amy, what have you seen from a Shipley perspective?
Very similar. I think right now, as we mentioned in the webinar, we're still really in such the early days of AI adoption that I think it's hard to really say that there are any clear norms that we see right now. I think there's just a ton of variation. Like Drew said, I also see that I think customers that really want to get the most out of AI are trying to get a solution that many people in the organization can use and get value out of, rather than it just being a tool for a proposal manager or a proposal writer. When I saw the question, another thing that came to mind is just, are enterprise companies trying to use a single AI solution for every division? And we see variation there too. We see some large companies that might have 3 or 4 business units, and they're trying to find a single AI solution that would support proposal operations, sales, BD across all of those business units. Others are buying them, are looking at them kind of business unit by business unit. I think one thing I know have talked with a customer together that actually right now their super users of AI aren't their proposal managers. It's actually their capture managers and their account executives who are trying to become, trying to use AI at the very front end of the process and really being strategic about the inputs that go into the final proposal. So right now, I would say that's a little bit all over the place. I guess we could see if we update this in 6 months, if we're starting to see any clearer patterns emerge. But right now, I think it's a little bit all over the place.
Right. Yeah. Generative AI certainly does not discriminate, and the natural time savings will certainly have more and more stakeholders involved in the process as you start to truncate, realize that time savings, and apply those in other strategic areas of the proposal function. So the next question here comes from Zach. This is also a question that we've gotten several times in our webinar series, but when folks begin to use programs such as pWin.ai, can that lead to almost identical proposal submissions? How do companies use an AI program without it reading like everyone else's submission? Vishwas, I'll let you answer this. Certainly, is a great segue to some of your previous points and having AI sit on top of your data, and then some additional mechanisms like the flight plan. But I'll allow you to speak to that in more detail.
Yeah, like you said, Patrick, this is the question that we get often because if you're using a tool, a generative AI tool, will it lead to content that looks very similar, right? I think that's the essence of the question. And our approach from day one has been that AI is an assistive tool. You still have to have a vision for producing content. And that vision, as we have said earlier in the webinar, that vision is manifested in terms of the flight plan. So that's where you're reflecting on what you want AI to write. What should it focus on? Do you understand what the customer's motivation is? And things like that. And those are, if you think about it, those are all unique things that your organization possesses based on your relationship on the ground, based on your subject matter experts, and based on your understanding of the solutions that have been deployed previously within that agency. So all of these things come in, and that will ultimately decide the heart of the content that's getting produced. Of course, we are working with Shipley, and we are infusing Shipley's gold standard best practices into what we are doing. But that's like saying, hey, if I attend a Shipley class, will my proposal look like the next attendee's proposal? Probably not. Shipley is teaching you very important things like customer centricity, and we take that into account. But ultimately, the heart of the content comes from your own knowledge repository and what you put inside the flight plan.
And I think I'll just add one thing onto that, Vishwas, how you edit what you receive. Because, you know, as much as I think some of us have this dream that AI will be like magic, you know, that we get an RFP, we push a button, we have an answer, we go. Honestly, even we could think about like how we are probably all using AI right now, maybe just even in email correspondence and other things. If you don't look at it and edit it in any way and make sure that it's saying what you want, you're really not using AI the way that it's intended to. So I think, Vishwas, I agree with everything that you said, but I think the other piece that makes your proposals sound unique is the ways that you edit the drafts you receive from AI, and that you put a spin and a sound to them that is uniquely you and your company's voice.
I mean, that's a great point. Don't they say that if you want to become a better writer, start by becoming a better editor so you know what to change? So that exactly speaks to the point you just made. Thank you. Patrick, back to you.
Yeah, excellent. So we only have a couple minutes here left. So I'm actually going to just give a question that I think will have a quick answer. But Amy, in your presentation, you had referred to the way in which the Army and certain government agencies are using a particular tool for procurement. Several participants have asked just to reiterate what that system is, if you could.
You know what? I'm so sorry. I'm drawing a blank right off the top of my head, but I have it in there and I can put it in the chat.
Yeah, absolutely. So, team, we have over 200 participants on today's call. There's been quite a lot of activity in the chat. So we have recorded all of those questions, and we'll be sure to follow up over email to make sure we get answers out to everyone who participated. So we only have about a minute and a half left before the top of the hour. So I figure I'll just close this out here. First off, I want to thank our speakers today, Amy and Vishwas. Thank you as always for your time. I want to thank Drew as well for his Q&A contributions. Again, just to emphasize, we have recorded and marked a number of different questions for follow-up. So look out for some emails coming from the pWin.ai and Shipley team following today's call. And we also look forward to the next webinar session. We have a buyer's guide to generative AI and proposal development that is queued up for the next several weeks here. In the meantime, be on the lookout for more correspondence from the pWin.ai and Shipley team regarding our upcoming feature release. So with that, thanks again, everyone. I hope everyone enjoys the rest of the day.
Thank you.
Take care, team. Thanks again.